Hey there, and congratulations. Look, you landed the new job, you got that big promotion, and your income is finally starting to really take off. You are entering such a crucial phase in your career right now, so as your virtual financial advisor, I want to welcome you to this one-on-one mentorship session. Today, in this explainer, we're going to build a blueprint for real lifelong wealth. We'll be utilizing some incredibly fascinating research from the best-selling book, The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas J. Stanley and William D. Danko. We're literally going to completely redefine what success actually means for your bank account. And honestly, it all starts by tearing down some very common myths that trap young professionals just like you every single day. So I want you to honestly ask yourself, what does a millionaire actually look like to you? Well, if you're like most of my clients when we first start working together, your brain instantly goes to luxury cars, massive sprawling mansions, designer clothes, the whole exotic vacation thing, right? But I'm here to completely challenge that assumption because the data from Stanley and Denko shows they look exactly like ordinary people. In fact, a staggering 80% of millionaires in America are first-generation rich. They absolutely didn't inherit some massive trust fund. They're your neighbors, they're local plumbers, teachers, the small business owners down the street. They are living very ordinary, unassuming lives, blending right in, all while their net worth quietly compounds in the background. As an advisor, I see clients constantly battling this visible wealth illusion. I mean, we live in an era where our feeds push a constant curated stream of absolute luxury, and it tricks us into thinking that spending money is the exact same thing as having money. Actually, scratch that. It makes us think spending money is the only way to show you have it. But the reality of wealth completely shatters those illusions. True wealth is almost entirely about what you do not see. It's the money that wasn't spent on that designer watch. It's the cash that wasn't dropped on the imported sports car or the VIP bottle service. Simply put, wealth is the accumulation of unspent resources. Let's compare two different paths here using some really powerful terminology from our source material. The authors basically categorize people into two main groups. First up, we have the under-accumulators of wealth, or UAWs. Now, a UAW might have a massive salary, but because of their exceptionally high spending, they're fundamentally broke. They're literally living paycheck to massive paycheck. On the flip side, we have the prodigious accumulators of wealth, or PAWs. A PAW might only pull in a moderate average income, but because of their high saving habits, they are actually the wealthy ones. The lesson here is absolutely critical for you. Your massive new paycheck doesn't automatically equal wealth if your spending remains completely out of control. It all really boils down to this golden rule. Wealth equals accumulated assets, not visible lifestyle. This is the absolute foundation of everything we're going to discuss in our mentorship today. As a young, high-earning professional, my strongest advice to you is to prioritize what you keep way over what you show off. You really need to focus intensely on building a quiet foundation of assets, stocks, bonds, real estate, things that work for you behind the scenes, rather than buying depreciating liabilities just to impress people you barely know and, let's be honest, probably don't even like. Now, because you're making more money now, which is fantastic, by the way, your growing paycheck faces immediate severe danger. Every marketer, every car dealership, and luxury brand in the world wants a piece of your new salary. So to build quiet wealth, you've got to play strong financial defense. You need to actively shield your rising income through strategic frugality. Many of the millionaires studied in the book do things like buy used cars, live in very modest homes, and they aggressively avoid unnecessary purchases. They're highly protective of their cash flow because they understand that defense wins championships in personal finance just as much as it does in sports. That defensive strategy is really meant to protect you from a trap I see high earners fall into all the time: lifestyle inflation. This is the highly dangerous habit of automatically increasing your spending every single time your income rises. You know how it goes. You get a raise, so you immediately buy a bigger home. You get an end-of-year bonus, boom, you lease a more expensive car. I have to emphatically warn you against this temptation. The millionaires next door actively avoid this treadmill. Even when their income increases significantly, they continue living comfortably, but reasonably. They absolutely refuse to constantly upgrade their lifestyle just because they can technically afford the monthly payments. And because they avoid that lifestyle inflation, they're able to create something incredibly powerful: the wealth gap. Think of this as the literal physical distance between your income and your expenses. As your advisor, I am far less interested in your gross salary, and I'm far, far more interested in the size of this gap. This spatial gap is the exact place where your financial independence is born. Financial freedom comes entirely from controlling your spending, not constantly increasing your consumption. So the wider you can make this gap by holding your expenses flat while your career earnings rise, the faster you are going to build true, lasting wealth. Okay, so now that we've locked down your defense, let's shift our mentorship conversation over to offense. Look, saving money is absolutely crucial, but keeping it stuffed under your mattress isn't going to make you wealthy. Because you kept your lifestyle in check and created that wealth gap we just talked about, you now have available capital. And as a source study shows, millionaires understand the immense power of putting that money to work. In fact, the authors found that on average, millionaires invest nearly 20% of their realized household income each year. Let that sink in. Instead of spending it on fleeting status symbols, they relentlessly deploy it into assets that grow over time. Now, executing this offense requires strict sequential behavior and absolute discipline. Step 1 is earning the money, which, hey, you're already doing with your rising career. Step 2 is saving below your means, which is that defense we just built. And step 3 is investing consistently. You don't just want to earn money. You want your money to go out there and earn more money. By deploying your capital into stocks, businesses, and retirement accounts, you allow compound growth to step in and do the heavy lifting for you. But fair warning, this requires patience. Small, consistent investments over decades produce extraordinary results, provided you have the discipline to stick to the sequence and just let time work its magic. As you start to implement these steps, you are going to face intense pressure. Young professionals are constantly bombarded with expectations in the corporate world. You might start feeling the pressure to keep up with your coworkers' expensive daily lunches, their fancy tailored suits, or those luxury cars sitting in the office parking lot. But wealthy people? They think differently. They value freedom far more than appearances. You really have to step back and ask yourself, are you working this hard and stressing yourself out to buy material purchases just to impress your peers? Or are you working this hard to buy back your own time and secure your ultimate independence? You essentially have two choices on this journey. You can choose looking rich, which means constantly buying luxury goods and running on this exhausting, never-ending treadmill of peer validation. Trust me, it's a life of high stress and hidden debt. Or you can choose being rich. This is taking the quiet path of true financial security and generating passive investment income. As your advisor, I strongly urge you to choose being rich. The goal isn't to look wealthy to strangers. The goal is to become genuinely wealthy for yourself. Embracing this detached, really pragmatic mindset is exactly what separates the truly wealthy from the visibly stressed. And speaking of smart, pragmatic decisions, it might actually surprise you to learn where these self-made millionaires generate their wealth. The path to value is often quite unglamorous. The research points out that many millionaires own what the authors call dull normal businesses. We're talking about welding contractors, pest control experts, paving contractors. They aren't out there constantly chasing the trendiest tech startup or the flashiest new industry. Instead, they focus on steady, disciplined value creation. They provide reliable services, they manage their operating costs incredibly wisely, and they just let their ordinary businesses generate extraordinary long-term wealth. Now, let's fast forward a bit. As you build these quiet wealth habits over the course of your career, they aren't just going to impact your retirement account. They're actually going to profoundly affect your future family dynamics. The decisions you're making today about spending, saving, and avoiding lifestyle inflation, they set the tone for the next generation. The millionaires studied in our source material don't just accumulate cash. They are highly conscious of the heavy responsibility of passing down wealth habits. They know for a fact that money without discipline is a complete recipe for disaster. The authors of our source material actually coined a really fascinating term for a major wealth killer: economic outpatient care. Now, you might assume wealthy parents just spoil their kids, but the book reveals that adult children who receive frequent cash gifts and unlimited financial support from their parents actually end up generating far less wealth of their own. They just become dependent. Truly wealthy parents avoid excessive economic outpatient care. Instead, they teach responsibility, discipline, and independence. They know that building wealth requires resilience, and those crucial financial habits absolutely must be taught because they simply cannot be bought. All right, as we bring our mentorship session to a close today, let's gather all of these incredible insights from the Millionaire Next Door into a cohesive, actionable summary for your future. The really great news here is that you absolutely do not need a massive, record-breaking income to become financially successful. What you need are the right habits repeated consistently over a long period of time. It's like building a house, brick by brick. Wealth is built quietly, in the background, day by day and paycheck by paycheck. It is 100% accessible to anyone willing to put in the discipline. So consider this your definitive mental snapshot of the financial playbook we've built today. First and foremost, remember that wealth is what you keep, so save aggressively rather than just spending your new income. Live comfortably below your means and ruthlessly avoid lifestyle inflation every single time you get a raise. Take those savings and invest them consistently, letting compound interest do the heavy lifting over time. Always prioritize your ultimate freedom over temporary social status. Focus on creating long-term, unglamorous value in your career. And finally, make sure you teach that exact same financial discipline to the next generation. I want to close our mentorship session today with a lingering, provocative thought. As you log off and go back to your day, look at your next paycheck or your next potential luxury purchase or even your next investment opportunity and ask yourself critically, will your future self thank you for the financial decision you are about to make right now? Because if you start saving, investing, and spending wisely today, the answer will be a resounding yes. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time as we continue to break down the strategies for your success.